Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
With me today is abundance teacher and money coach, Jodie Lynn and
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
It's funny, Jodie Lynn, we were talking before we got started. We realized, this is probably something we should talk about on the show because it's such good stuff. And it made me realize, there are so many times that we finish a show and we have a guest. And then we get talking with the guest and we talk after, for maybe 15, 20 minutes sometimes. And then we say, geez, we should have recorded this. This is even better than what we talked about during the show. Mm-hmm. So let's see if we can avoid that today. Today, we'll try to talk about the good stuff on the show.
We'll bring it all in.
Okay, that's cool. So anyway, the impetus behind today's topic comes from a couple things in my own life, but it also comes from, I was watching some Gaia TV. I subscribed to Gaia for the first time. I'd never really done that before. And like Joel and I were talking about this on Monday, how he had subscribed too. He subscribed for like 2 months and then he basically ran through everything. And so he stopped the subscription because there wasn't anything else he wanted to watch. And I have a feeling the same thing's going to happen with me. But one of the things that I saw, there was a special in some sort of a conference that was held where a channeler was doing the thing. And the channeler's alter ego side is called Bashar, which is a fairly famous channeler. And that channeler, Bashar, was talking about how from the source perspective, the non-physical perspective, there's no time. So there's really no such thing as past, even though we humans feel like we know that there's a past going on. I'm convinced of it. I don't know about you. It certainly seems real to me.
Yeah,
I don't require a lot of convincing either,
No.
But it does create a challenge for us, right? Because if we buy into these teachings, and we're also buying into what quantum mechanics is telling us, and multiverses and all these other theories that have erupted is probably the right word, but arisen, I guess is the word I really had in mind, have arisen over the last 10, 15, 20, 25 years. It's a challenge because what they're really saying at their core is there's no actual past. What we think is the past is us creating that past in our minds during the present. And it changes from moment to moment, depending on whatever it is we have in our minds. So that's how you end up changing your past. And meanwhile, my rational mind is saying, what? What are you talking about?
How is that possible?
How is that possible?
And yet it is. And this is what we were just talking about offline, is that I feel like I'm divided between these two worlds. One, or the tangible, and maybe the other, the intangible. Just like you were talking about, the past is not the past. It's not real. Time doesn't actually exist. And they say that about people who are interviewed as witnesses to a crime or whatever, right? Like a tragedy. 9/11, for example, they interview the witnesses right after and then 10 years later, and their story is completely different. And they would swear on a Bible that this is what happened, but it's very different than their account 10 years before.
So there's evidence that suggests that it might actually be true.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's almost frightening.
Yeah. It is frightening. It is frightening, and it's also exciting.
Yes.
But it creates this dichotomy in my mind, at least, of then what is reality?
And how do we deal with it? To take it to a more mundane level, you were talking about something that's a very low vibration event. It was a very painful event for many people. I'll tie it into the world of crime and the justice system and so forth, which depends upon witness testimonies about what did happen in the past. And it's well documented within judicial circles that testimonies about the same event from 5 different people are going to be 5 different testimonies because everybody has different recollections of it. Well, if you add in that they have different recollections because they're all creating different pasts, how the heck is the justice system supposed to process? How is that supposed to work? It kind of throws this whole thing out on its ear.
Right?
It does.
Yeah. It's how is that supposed to work? How's life supposed to work? Is there multiple different variations of us from the past?
Well, yeah, that's part of the theory. The theory is that each time that we come up with a new past from moment to moment, we're creating new versions of ourselves. Well, okay, now this is really getting confusing.
Yeah.
So which version am I right now? I thought I was the same person that I was, 60 years ago. Apparently not.
Well, I mean, I look better.
But
That
now, is that
you're right.
because you've been doing work on yourself, and so that you decide you're going to have a better self image, and so you decide that you look? I
Yeah.
mean, how do we even figure that? How do we calculate that?
I don't know. I just think I'm prettier today than I was 5 years ago or 10 years ago. I don't know. I just think I'm better with age. I'm like wine.
Personally, I agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah, that's just how I'm made. I'm like Benjamin Button, reverse aging.
I like that. Yeah, that you've said that before too.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
true. But yeah, it's so interesting because our perspective and like what is perspective, but like our perspective can change and completely alter the way that we view the present as
Right.
well as the past. And I am a huge like advocate of that. Like spin that reality until it locks into a place that feels good for you. Like find the silver lining, find the goodness out of it, because we live in a world of contrast. So there has to be something good there. You're just not seeing it either in this moment, hasn't come yet, or hasn't dawned on you, or whatever it might be. But this is the conversation that I was having with a friend just before we jumped on, is like, what is the right perspective? There's very few things that are quote unquote right or true or accurate or absolute, whatever the word is that you want to use. It is all subjective.
Yes, totally subjective. And actually, I'm glad you brought up the whole concept of right and wrong, because this is something I came to a conclusion about a number of years ago, that right and wrong was completely wrong for me.
Yeah.
I mean, as a topic, as an idea, because all it did was lead me into dark holes where I trapped myself.
Yeah.
I mean, the tendency, of course, when you're looking at right and wrong is to be judgmental, right? That's what right and wrong is all about. I'm going to judge. Am I being right? Am I being wrong? Is that person right? Is that person wrong?
Yeah.
And every time that I do that, I end up paying the price for it. I think, wait a minute, there's something wrong with this system. This is not the way the system is supposed to be. Like you said, it's supposed to be absolute. It's supposed to be, make everything clean and easy to understand. And it's doing exactly the opposite. It's making it more complex. It's making it harder to understand. And it's so subjective that, I mean, I understand now and I appreciate now just how subjective life is, because if you look at it, the things that people consider to be right or wrong can vary across the globe. I mean, there are different cultures that look at things differently. They just have different values on things. And some of the values they hold, I would just cringe at. So where's the absolute right and wrong in there?
There isn't.
And if there isn't absolute right and wrong, then why are we so focused on it? And yet we are. Yeah.
I don't know. I think that maybe it was an intention of like honor, being honorable. And then we got into, oh, well, this is what honor looks like, or this is what right and wrong looks like. And then trying to hold ourselves to that standard of like what we're supposed to be doing, quote unquote, which really just traps us in a box, because we make up all of these things. That's, another thing that we were talking about offline is like my life. What I'm realizing is my life, like everything in my life, are things, quote unquote, that I'm not supposed to be doing. According to other people. Yeah. According to other people. And I'm like, that's interesting. And when I think about that not supposed to be doing, there's that automatic reaction, which is, in this moment, I'm realizing is the programmed reaction of fear, of like not falling in line, of being left out of the crowd, or, shunned by people. I don't know who does shunning nowadays, but like canceled, or like, this, it feels like you're going to get thrown out on the floor of the jungle. You're no longer a part of the tribe, and you're going to get eaten by a tiger or something like that, or a lion, or But really this comes down to like that response in itself is a fear response. That is the
Yes.
lizard brain. That is the fight, flight, freeze,
Mm-hmm.
where we know that your brain doesn't work at its full capacity when you're in that that state. Like I
Mm-hmm.
was going to say state of mind, but it's more of like your state of mind and state of body. Like your whole being goes through it. Your brain shuts down and only focuses on certain things. And like all animals, plants, whatever, we all have a version of this. Like a plant, if you stop watering it, it starts to suck the water back into like the stem and like the extremities, which are the leaves. They get like limp and rubbery and whatever, and you can
Mm-hmm.
really tell that they're reserving water. That plant is reserving water. Our body does the same thing when it goes into that fight, flight, freeze. It shuts down other reasoning capabilities because you can't reason when a tiger is chasing you. You just have to move.
Right. That's true.
Yeah, but it's interesting that that's tied to what we're supposed to be doing. I think we've been programmed in that state.
We have been programmed in that state. And boy, that just adds to the confusion the more I think about it.
Yeah, totally.
There's one of the best quotes I ever heard came from Abraham Hicks on this topic. It comes from one of their books. Don't ask me which one. I don't remember which one it was. But they were trying to address the question of how you handle situations when somebody else is upset with you about something. And they made a really interesting point in the quote. I don't have it handy, so I can't read the exact quote, but the gist of it was this. Whenever someone is upset with you and whenever someone blaming you for something, what they're really saying is, I don't like the way you have decided to live your life in this regard. I want you to live my way instead. And that's really what right and wrong is about. When you really get down to it, it's about, I have this picture in my mind or this set of priorities in my mind that you should be living by. And if you don't, you're ruining my life. When you frame it that way, it's like, well, shoot, that's pretty codependent, isn't it?
That's right.
So here's the interesting takeaway. Right and wrong is codependent.
Yeah. Absolutely it is. And not exactly right or wrong.
Yeah. In fact, the whole right or wrong thing kind of falls apart pretty quickly when you look at it up close that way.
Yeah, it sure does. Which there's freedom there in
Yes.
creating your own reality, in
Mhm.
seeing that we're not married to one way or another. There is billions of possibilities that exist. And I say
Mhm.
that all the time. But standing in that moment where you're on the cliff of like looking at all of the possibilities is a very different feeling.
Right.
Like, you know, going with that ideology of okay, well, I don't like the way you're doing it and you're going against what I want you to do. When you're standing beside that person that's saying that, you're standing beside a person who's like, come over here, I'll put my arm around you and we'll do this together.
Mm.
Whereas when you're like, no, I'm going to do what I want to do or what I feel is best, that goes against what they want you to do, now all of a sudden you're all alone.
Yeah. And well, you also made an interesting point too while we were offline that I want to bring in. You said you were talking to me about all these different people who have all these things that you're supposed to be doing. I love the phrase that you used, supposed to do this, supposed to do that. And you mentioned to me that all the best things that have happened in your life were things that happened when you were doing what you weren't supposed to do.
Yeah.
So if we understand this whole idea of being supposed to do something as somebody else trying to impose their wishes on us about what would make them happy for you to behave the way they want you to behave, well, then it becomes kind of clear, doesn't it? Now we know why you end up with a better life when you don't do what you're supposed to do. Because now you're not trying to make
doing
your
what
life
you want to
based
do.
on somebody else's happiness. It's now based on what you want and what you like and what you enjoy.
Yeah. What you want to do. Yeah. Absolutely.
So of course you're going to end up producing a better result that way. I mean, actually the question that kind of comes up is, how would you expect not to?
Well, I think like when you say that, I'm like, well, but there's certain things that you shouldn't do, Jody. That's the voice in my head. It's like,
Mhm.
well, but it would just be easier just to fall in line and just do
Mhm.
what they want you to do, and not break the
Mhm.
mold and whatever.
Mhm. Mhm.
I think sometimes we just get sucked back into what everybody else wants for our lives
We
or
do.
perceives that we should be doing for our lives.
And then it becomes a habit to the point where we end up sucking ourselves back in because
Yeah.
that's what we're supposed to do.
That's what we're supposed to do. Be a good little steward or whatever.
Mm.
Good little girl. Oh,
Why is it
man.
when we treat ourselves that way, we don't say it's condescending? Because it is.
Totally condescending.
Come on. We just
Absolutely.
don't apply it to ourselves saying, well, I'm being condescending to myself. And yet that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
looking down our own noses at ourselves.
Yes. We're like, bad dog. Bad dog.
Bad dog.
Don't pee there. Oh, oh, man. Well, I think that it has a lot to do also with like being bold and courageous. And
Mm.
I think that that's where we're at in our world today with the things that we're learning. And we have to have the courage to go in that direction of like, okay, so if time isn't real and I'm just recreating the past every time I think about it, or creating a new past, or my past doesn't actually exist, then what? And how do I move forward with that thought? Where do I move forward to? That takes a lot of courage
And how
because
do I
there's,
stick to it?
yeah. How do I stick to it? And I mean, because there's people that are in the world that are like, no, you're freaking crazy. Your plants aren't talking to you. And I'm
Well,
like,
not just people in
yes,
the world, but myself. I mean, I have a whole lifetime of experiencing what seemed like past, present, and future. And I'm
yes.
supposed to just kind of dismiss that. I mean, that's not so easy to dismiss.
No, it's not.
I think I'll just sit here. I'll meditate for a while. I'm just gonna meditate on the fact that I create my own reality. I create my own past, and I create my own future. And meanwhile, my rational mind is saying, "Are you out of your flipping mind?" Of course, that's a bunch of bull. You know
Right?
it is, and that's what you're up against. It isn't so much that you're dealing with everybody else, although that certainly is part of it. It's that you're dealing with yourself. You're dealing with your
Yes.
own experience that says, "Well, there is such a thing as a past. What the heck are you talking about?" And
Yeah.
that doesn't go away easily. It puts up a fight.
Well, and I think maybe it comes back to that fight, flight, freeze, like the lizard
Mm,
brain of like that comes back in. Like it is unsafe to think this.
yes,
People are going to think you're crazy.
yes, including yourself.
Including yourself. Exactly. Like, I think you're crazy, lady. Like, I've had these conversations with myself. Am I crazy? Am I just losing it? Like, losing touch with reality
Mhm,
in my
mhm,
life?
mhm,
And then I'll be like, but what is reality? And it's like having a conversation between a like a commander in chief, like a dictator,
mhm.
and a guru.
There's a combo.
Yeah, like back and forth, like you're dumb. No, no, what is dumb?
It gives new meaning to the angel and devil on the shoulders routine, right?
Totally, absolutely.
Because now it's not just what's right or wrong. It's two viewpoints trying to talk you into something, neither of which is what you really wanted in the first place.
Yeah, and you're like, okay, well, what? I mean, what do I do with this information now? How do I move forward? What's
And that's how we end up with the question that your friend was asking. Well, should you be doing that?
should you be doing that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And there is this part of me. This is what I was telling you before we started. Is I'll let everybody else in. Like my whole life is these things that I shouldn't be doing. And I mean, like, there's nothing illegal or immoral or like anything like that. Don't worry, guys. I'm good. There's just things that people have told me that I shouldn't do, like go on a date with my now husband. Like
Mm,
this was before we started dating, obviously, but like
yeah.
people were very upset with me and said I should not date him. And so I shouldn't be doing that.
Just out of curiosity, did they actually have like a cogent reason for this, or is this just like a general warning thing?
Well, everybody had their own perspectives, but these were like the key perspectives. The key ones that stood out was you shouldn't get involved with somebody in your business.
Oh yeah, that
Don't
comes
poop
up a
where you
lot.
eat.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not like my husband worked with me or anything like that. His ex worked for me and introduced me to him. And then we started dating and she had a problem with it. And my trainer, the guy who trained me in the business, he was like, well, it's pretty clear. It's obvious. Like, you choose business over that. Like, you haven't even gone on a date with this guy. Like, why would you throw away your business for him? And for me, in that moment, I was like, no, nobody tells me what to do. Like, I'm not, they're broken up. She's the one that suggested I go on a date with him. And now that I am, she's upset with it. Like, they were broken up for years at this point. Like, I'm not trying to throw it in her face or do anything mean.
Yeah.
Or, like, I'm not a malicious person in any way. But for me, it came down to, what if he's the guy? And I choose to have her on my team, who I have now effectively told her she can control my life by meeting her demands.
Yeah,
exactly. And then I don't have him, but what if he's the one? And so I chose him. And then we got married.
And how interesting. Your advisor said, well, you should pick your business over the potential relationship because it's much more valuable. You ended up picking the relationship and you got the business too. I wonder what your advisor would say to that.
Well, he doesn't remember it quite like that. And so he just pretends
that that fits our whole topic, right? He remembers it differently.
Yeah, absolutely. We've never actually had the conversation. I've only ever kind of like poked him, oh yeah, you didn't want me to date Nate. Funny. Like, everybody got over it. They moved on.
Yeah.
But in like other facets of my life, like I have this research project where I'm learning more about the history of money and how currency is created, monetary policy, and like how a lot of things are illusionary. A lot. And so this project is just kind of like a passion project, but it's not going with the grain, it's going against the grain. Like, it is breaking everything that I thought was true, like the simplest things. Like, you think when you loan money from the bank that they're actually giving you their money. They're not.
Much.
No. They don't have a reserve that they take it out of and give it to you. They just type it into existence. Like, money, there is no value behind it except for what you believe. It's just fugazi, whatever that movie says, right? Like, there's a lot of
speaking of movies, it does remind me of a movie, Jimmy Stewart in It's a Wonderful Life. Because in that movie, he plays the role of the lead protagonist running a small, what they call a building loan, similar to what we would call a savings and loan. And that building and loan has a run on it at the same time that the local regular bank also has a run. In fact, it's the regular bank's run that causes a run on his bank. And so he's got all of the people, and he knows, they all know everybody. It's, it's Bedloe Falls, I think is the name of it. Bellows Falls, excuse me. Everybody in Bellows Falls knows everybody else, right? So he knows everybody who's in the lobby. They're all friends of his. They all know each other, right? And so they're all in there demanding their money, and they're afraid because it's a bank run. And whenever it's a bank run, people are afraid because they're afraid their money's going to disappear. And so they come in asking to get their money. And of course, there's not enough money in the till to pay them all. And the way he tries to explain it is, well, your money isn't here. It's in Fred's house, and it's in Joan's house, and it's in Bill's house. That's where the money, that's how this works. And really, I mean, it's a very simplistic way of explaining it, but that's the way it actually does work. The money doesn't actually stay in the bank. They loan it out for people to do things like buy homes. When you understand it that way, it starts to make at least a little more sense, but it's also a bit like smoke and mirrors. Because, well, where did it go? Well, they went into the house. Well, where is it in the house? Well, it's in the mortgage money. It's
under the mattress somewhere.
Under the mattress, yeah. But it's not under the mattress. That's the whole point. It's in the value of the house.
Where is the money?
Show me the money.
Show me the money. Yeah, it's just it's interesting. So it's breaking all of these perceptions that I have, and it's not. I mean, as a advisor, the thing is that advisors don't really know. There's a very small faction of people in the world that understand, because they've broken up this stuff into monetary policy, economic policy, fiscal policy, banking terms, the Federal Reserve, financial advising, investments, like all of these different sectors.
And very intentionally, by the way.
Yeah.
Because even just by listing that list, you just lost 3/4 of the audience. That's the way this kind of thing works.
That's right. Yeah. So as an advisor, I didn't know all of these things because that wasn't really my job, but I felt like I needed to start understanding them. And the more that I understand them, the more that I question the entire system as a whole. Like, it's all illusionary. Like, it doesn't really add up. Like, it's not what you think it is. And it's funny because we get tied onto money so deeply. Like, if I don't have money, then I am worthless.
Yes.
And then you start to see that it's literally a piece of paper that is backed by nothing but promises. Somebody's promised to pay.
And there's so many cliches coming to my mind about promises right now.
Right? Right?
Including the one that says that a promise isn't worth the paper it isn't printed on.
It isn't printed on. Yeah, exactly. It's so interesting. Yeah, anyway, I could go on forever on that. But that's not something that I'm really supposed to be doing, quote unquote. It's not a part of my job. It's not something, like, the more that I learn, the more, I guess, critical I am of the things that I do on the financial side of things, which is not what the company I work for wants me to do. I mean, even this show is not really something that they want me to do. They don't really want to.
I mean, this is so far out there, this show, that
right?
That's the last thing they want you to do.
Yeah. And so, like, there's this huge list of, and it comes down to everything in my life is on this list of shouldn't be doing according to other people.
Yeah.
I shouldn't be trying to have a baby naturally. I should be going through, IVF or, whatever, right? Like, there's all of these things. And I think it takes a lot of courage to be like, no, this is what I want to do. And I'm going to follow what feels good. I'm going to follow that alignment.
Yeah.
But you get stuck.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh shit, am I crazy?
Well, not only that, I don't know about you. I suspect this is true of you, but I know it's true of me. I also feel like I'm kind of hanging out there in the wind, like all by myself.
Totally. Yeah. Will somebody understand me? Will they get me? Like, will I be all by myself? Am I going to be all alone? What, like, who's going to save me?
That's when all the doubts creep in. That's when all the fears creep in.
Yeah. For sure. And you know what? When I remind myself of stories like the Nate situation, like, in hindsight, look at how it went. Like, we fell in love, we got married a year and a bit later, and we've been 6 years married this summer. We're happily married.
Hooray, hooray.
Yeah. It's a beautiful story. And I didn't know that ending. I didn't know what was going to come next with that decision. So in that moment, I was sitting there in the precipice of, I'm going to lose this person who has threatened to quit if I continue to date him. And I'm going to lose all that potential that comes with her working in my business. I'm going to piss off some other people. I'm going to lose the respect potentially of the people who trained me, my mentors, whatever, right? I might crash and burn, and this might be a big mistake. But there was something within me that was like, in my heart, Jodie, like, one, you don't let people tell you what to do. Regardless of how this shakes out, this is my life. Mine. So I make the decision, and I make it for me, not for somebody that works for me or somebody that's watching me. It is for me. So I need to go within and figure out what I want to do. And there was something else there too. The other thing is that I had to, this was it. I had to look at what I really desired in my life. And the number one at that point in my life was I wanted a relationship. Like I wanted to find my person. I was ready to settle down. I was ready to get married. I wanted to have a family. I was in that space. That was paramount. Like I was willing to lose everything.
Wow.
For that one thing. I wanted my person. So to give up that chance that he could be my person, that wasn't an option at all. So it made my decision very easy. I don't care what you guys think. I'm sorry. If you're going to quit, you're going to quit. And that's too bad. You know, I'm willing to work with you, but I'm not willing to bend to your demands. This is my life. And then fast forward 7 years later, here we are.
Here we are. Indeed. Yeah. And that points to a few things, doesn't it? It points, first of all, to the fallacy, and it truly is a fallacy, that there are things you're supposed to do in life.
Yeah.
In fact, the moment that you hear the words supposed to, probably the first thing we should train ourselves to do is to doubt the words.
Yeah.
So associate supposed to with, yeah, I don't really think that's true. And do that.
It comes back to, you know, that saying we always say, they say, and then we always say, who said?
Who are they? Yeah.
Who are they? Right? It's the same thing with you're not supposed to. Who says? Who are they? Like, where are they?
So let's tie this back to the original topic, because maybe this gives us some clues about how we navigate those choppy waters of this ideology, if you want to call it that, or this theory that says that there is no past because there's no time. Time doesn't actually exist. It's an illusion, just like that money thing you were talking about. By the way, I love the fact that you talked about that, because I did the same investigation myself, which shows we're both kind of crazy. But nevertheless, it's cool that you brought up that particular topic. But even more than that, this idea that we create our reality from moment to moment, and we create our past from moment to moment. We initially laid out how daunting that is, how scary that is, how impossible, how it boggles our minds so much that we can't handle it. But what if just the act of refusing to buy into supposed to becomes our first step to accepting that, to finding a way to make that actually make sense in our lives? What if the supposed to is really the main factor, the main idea behind we have a past? The past is continuous. We can see the whole thing. What if supposed to is a part of that? And that's what's holding that illusion together.
I think my brain's broken.
I froze it.
Yeah. Huh. Well, that would make a lot of sense if those are in the same camp.
I think they are.
If the past doesn't exist, then what you're supposed and what you're supposed to do doesn't actually exist, because there's not a manual for life.
Nope.
Or relationships, or like any of the experiences.
Not one that I've seen anyway. Certainly not English.
No. And something that I teach quite heavily in abundance consciousness is that if you can find one person doing it differently, it means that the way you think it is not absolute, meaning there's other ways to do it. So very few things are absolute. So that supposed to be, or that past, is one possibility of the billions that truly are available.
And I'll even take my connection, because I've drawn this connection between what you're supposed to do and this belief that there is a continuous past behind us.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to tie that in a little bit closer. What if that need we have to have a continuous past, to remember the past, to remember it as it really was? What if that is really nothing more than doing what we're supposed to do? What if that whole process comes about because we feel like for some reason we are impelled to do what we're supposed to do. And I think about things like, when you're first growing up, when you're in your earliest, your prime development years, age, what they give different ranges, but I'll say like age 2 to 7. What if during that period of time, that the one thing that your parents want more than anything else is for you to obey them, because that's how they feel they can keep you safe and feed you and take care of their stuff and all. I mean, it's a key part from the parents' point of view of parenting. Well, what if that's where memory comes from? Because they want you to remember what you did before so that you don't do it again. They want you to remember this rule that they gave you and not breaking that rule. They want you to remember all these different things to suit their agenda.
Yep.
What if that's where the idea of the past comes from?
That would make sense.
It's kind of spooky.
It's also what's rattling around in my brain is there is like an old adage, and I don't remember how it goes, but like you're looking back at like your younger years and like we are taught to like fawn over them, like, oh, the best years of my life are over. Now I'm over the hill, or like, I don't know. There's lots of sayings like that.
Oh, yeah.
It would make sense that there is something else at play.
A big portion of this is the concept of time. I mean, the theory here is that time doesn't actually exist. There is no such thing as time. It's an illusion. And so it leads to these distortions, including the distortion of creating a past that isn't actually there because there's no time. Well, if we carry that out another couple of steps, don't we get to the point where we're saying that time is a way to trap ourselves in a limited form of thought? I mean, it doesn't actually exist, so we're trapping ourselves. So why are we trapping ourselves? Well, I just brought up the possibility that we're trapping ourselves in order to suit others. But of course, we learn over time to also do it for ourselves. We learn to trap ourselves. I mean, we set those expectations, those not supposed tos, for ourselves, and then we follow the not supposed tos for ourselves, all feeding into this long chain of events that lead us to believe that there is a past, because we say there's a chain of events. And so what do we do? Well, we invented time. In many ways we did. I mean, how many people have lived entire lives on schedules? This is going on. This is not a new thing, right? This is not with the internet. This is going on since the first timepiece was invented, since the first, sundial was invented. When the shadow reaches that point, I want you to remember to do this or to think that. And that's creating that past time behavioral / thought process modality. Conditioning, however you want to call it. Right.
Yeah.
So is it possible that this whole thing about time is all about satisfying someone else? We do it because everybody else believes it. I think it's actually on the right track.
I think so too.
I mean, I have all this white hair. Now, what do I associate white hair with? The fact that I am 67 years old. That's what happens when you reach 67, because there's this whole past that leads up to it. I have that number of years behind me. Therefore, that's my past. That's how I end up with my age, all that kind of stuff. And the natural thing that comes out of that, this is what we all believe, right? That natural thing that comes out of that is, therefore, I'm older and my hair is turning white and I'm going to reach the point where I decay and die. And that there's a whole thought process that's in there. And that thought process gets carried on continuously. We keep recreating it moment to moment because we believe it's true.
Yeah. So it's infiltrated. Time has infiltrated our entire life. And nothing actually exists.
So here becomes the real big challenge. How do I shake that belief? I mean, I think I'm pretty convinced now it's just a belief I created. I mean, and it's affecting me in a lot of different ways because I created that thing on an ongoing basis. It's a continuous creation. So it's going to keep affecting me as long as I stick with it.
Yeah. Well, and I think one of the questions that I would ask if I was in like a coaching capacity is,
Mm,
what is the benefit? Because we don't do things without a benefit, and the benefit might be twisted and
sure.
make no logical sense. But to some part of you or your person or whatever, and some part to me, and my person, like somewhere within me, there is a benefit. Why I lean on this, like the not supposed to. Why do I go back to that? A benefit could be literally to keep me safe.
Hmm.
Like I don't want to be outside of the crowd, because that, like being seen outside of the crowd, you might be weird and then you're a target and like whatever. So
Hmm.
what's the benefit of believing that there is a past and that time does exist?
There are a lot of benefits.
Yeah, I
There,
think
there
so.
really are. There are a ton of them.
Like the fondness of memories and
Hmm.
experiences that you've had, like, and it's so weird that a part of this conversation feels very familiar to a like victim
Mm,
versus being victimized conversation,
yeah.
because a lot of times when you're a victim of anything that's traumatic, um when you're in the process of letting go of that stuff, a lot of times what will come up is, who am I without this? So if
Mm.
we're letting go of the past, like it didn't happen, are we also letting go of all of those juicy experiences that we had throughout, the versions of us that we liked or didn't like or grew through, and like our moments of pride and, excitement and joy and triumph?
That raises another interesting question in my mind. One of the things that particularly people in spiritual circles who are trying to explain how all this stuff works often like to rely upon in their explanations is the idea that we come into this life with a veil over our eyes so that we can't remember our past, we can't remember past lives or anything like that. And that this veil is intentional for a variety of reasons that are given. Well, what if it's that there's no past? What if that's the actual reason for the veil?
Because then you would see it all at
Well,
once.
not so much that you would see all, but since there is no time, there is nothing to see.
What now?
And now the whole question of what they call Akashic records comes into it. So, what is an Akashic record? If it's not a record of the past, what is it a record of? And
Well, see,
what does it mean to say that it's even a record? Because isn't record tied in our language to something that was recorded in the past?
when it comes to time, this is what the explanation that made the most sense to me. It was that it was like, if you were to imagine a circle, and then if you were to look from the center point of the circle and you go up,
Okay.
you can see that if you marked over here on the circle, there would be a future if you went forward, and there would be a past from that point. But when you're standing in the middle and you're looking at the whole thing, there is no future, there is no past. It's all happening simultaneously.
Mhm.
And so if that is how time works, that there is no actual time, that everything is only now, like that the past is happening on a different wavelength, but
Mhm.
right now, maybe to further what you were saying, maybe that veil would show you all of the instances. Like, what if the veil, I don't know, this might be really crazy, but what if there was a veil and we actually think of it like a veil and it's lifted, and then all of a sudden you start looking around your house and there's another wall over there,
Mm.
and then there's another wall over there, and then over there and over there, like, and
You're
everywhere you
talking about the
go.
Walt worm is what you're talking about.
Yeah, where they're everywhere.
Right.
Would you see it? Because technically, are they different people? They're different iterations.
Mm.
We can change, but we're all one. So that also, this is also something we were talking about before we got on. It's really freaking me out about plants because they go with you to experience the world.
Yeah, tell people about that. That because we didn't really touch on that during the show. So bring people up to speed on that.
Okay,
phenomenon.
so there is scientific data of that. If you care for your plants and whatever, they've hooked them up to these machines, and then they had the caretakers go and do other things, whatever that might be. And this one guy, he goes to a surprise birthday party, and they all yell, "Surprise!" And at that very moment that the surprise was happening, the plant has a reaction like they are there with you. And they are connected to you, which makes sense in terms of like we are all one.
Right.
But it really started to like impact my thought processes when I was thinking like not necessarily we are one, but we are connected. And so everywhere I go, because that plant is just consciousness in a different form, but their form is what we see. It's a cucumber plant. It's a pumpkin or whatever it is, right? But it is connected to me and living life through my experience everywhere I go. So maybe there isn't a bunch of different Walts, but maybe if that veil, just follow me here because it's getting crazy. Maybe if that veil was completely like severed, we would have the capacity to feel in real time any one of those moments, like just like that.
So
like
now we're faced with a real conundrum because we have two, on the one hand, on the other hand, situations. On the one hand, there is no past because there's no time, so there's nothing to remember. On the other hand, there's everything to remember without any time being passed. So we have a zero information universe and a 100% all the time information universe. I mean, those are about as far apart from each other as you can get.
Then you bring in that study of observation, where they were like hitting balls against it wasn't balls, but like electrons against
the double slit experiment. Yeah.
Exactly, the double slit experiment. And when you were watching it or when you were thinking of watching it, it changed what happened. So now there is not only what is happening without the observation, but there is also what is happening with the observation, also both things happening.
This is where our minds are boggling. That's why we're kind of pausing here. Like, okay, how do we unravel that one?
And all of this comes to a 0 point, I think.
Yes,
of
singularity.
of singularity, where we are all one. And I really do believe that. I think that we're all fractals of this higher source, having different experiences. Now I know this about the plants. Freaks me out that they're coming with me. Like I honestly think about it like, oh, I need to have a good experience today because I'm like the representation for the plants out in this world. Like they're only here for the summer, so I got to show them a good time. Like I got to be a good house. What is it like when you take care of people when they're at your house?
A caretaker or a caregiver
or like when somebody comes, hostess.
A hostess. Oh, okay.
I need to be a good hostess. Show them a good time.
well, I'll make it even more complex for you.
No, don't.
It's not just the plants that we're tied to. We're tied to everything and everybody. So we have these same kinds of connections with everything. I mean, the responsibility level is absurd here.
Yeah.
So once again, all I can point to is if I don't want to drive myself crazy with that, I have to be focusing my attention on what I want to do with my life. Because the moment I start giving attention to what all of the rest of that wants me to do with my life, the supposed tos get so large and so overwhelming, you can just drown in them.
Yeah, and they're all fake.
Because
we don't know who said them.
We don't know who said them. Even if we do know who said some of them, but still.
Well, maybe, yeah.
It still ties you up in knots because you're completely living your entire life You're letting everybody else be vicarious through your life except you.
Yeah. We stopped living and started for ourselves and started living for everyone else.
Yeah. Whereas if we flip it around and we say, well, I'm going to make decisions that are right for me, they can still live vicariously through you.
Sure. It's just, I want to go down this road and we're going down this road. So come or don't come. That's okay.
So that kind of raises, for me, it raises the idea of how this whole thing sums up. What if we are all living vicariously through each other? What if that's part of why we come into this life? To live our own life and then to have a certain degree of vicarious interest in other people's lives.
Maybe that's where the supposed to also comes from.
Tell me about
Because,
that.
well, if we are all one and we are all vicariously living through other people, that makes total sense. We're all just fractals from one source split into many. So of course we would be connected. Of course we'd have an impact on one another. We've seen studies of this, meditation dropping crime rates astronomically, like different things. When we come together, even small groups, how we impact the whole. The hunter and the monkey, that story of, the monkeys washing the sweet potatoes on one island, and then all of a sudden, monkeys around the world were washing sweet potatoes, and nobody ever told them. We're just ultimately connected. But what if it is for, and I'm going to use these words really loosely, so take them with a grain of salt, but what if for the good and for the bad, we have both experiences? Like we're living vicariously through others, whether we're intentional or we understand it or experience it on like a conscious level that we're experiencing through them. But we're also not manipulated, but like influenced by what their perception in their body in that moment of time should be doing. We're also influenced.
It's an interesting summarized theory that you just put out there. And I think it has a lot of merit too. It also reminds me of something. I'm reminded of particularly physicists who are still on the non-quantum mechanics side, because there are some. I saw an article someone had posted online. They come very much from that. No, I don't buy into the spooky action at a distance. No, I don't buy into any of that. None of that really actually exists. And I think I can appreciate their perspective for the first time probably ever, because that's the only way they can maintain their sanity. That's the only way that they can make sense out of it. Because without that barrier in place, they end up where we are right now, trying to make sense out of this, this huge connected mess, this spaghetti thing that we're all kind of dealing with.
You know what resonates in my mind as you say exactly that? There's a bunch of like near-death experiences that are being recorded, and more people are talking about near-death experiences.
Right.
But in every one that I've seen, they go to this place, and maybe it's not a place, an actual place, but they go somewhere, and then all of a sudden they understand it all. Like they receive this information like we're talking about, and it just simply makes sense.
Right.
And I wonder if that perhaps is the veil.
Yeah.
Or a part of the veil is like we're not like we only use a certain portion of our brain. Like maybe we need to activate the other portion of our brain to really understand this, for it to like land, or I don't know what it is.
Well, even that idea, that the idea that we use only a small percentage of our brain, that's actually been debunked.
Really?
It really has. Yeah. I don't remember what the exact circumstances of the debunking were, but the general idea of it is that the claim comes from how brains were measured for a particular kind of experiment. And they were looking for the brain to exhibit certain kinds of behaviors, and most of the brain did not exhibit those certain kinds of behaviors. Therefore, the brain was dormant during that experiment. But what they've since come to realize is that just because the brain isn't responding to that doesn't mean the brain isn't responding. Just because the brain doesn't think that way doesn't mean the brain isn't thinking. It's just that it doesn't think that way. In other words, that one case is what they were trying to build an entire brain society on. And it doesn't work that way because
Mhm.
it's kind of like saying you can never take a break, because the moment you take a break, that's proof that you're dead, because you've stopped. You know,
I'm alive.
I really am. I'm alive.
Oh man, that's so funny.
So
Mhm.
what all that adds up to for me is I can not only let go of the idea that we only use a percentage of our brain, a small percentage of our brain, but I'm actually becoming more and more convinced that not only do we use all of our brain, but we use it quite effectively,
Mm.
far beyond what many of us are willing to acknowledge. And for good reason, because there are a lot of things that if we are creating this reality over and over again, and I think there's a lot of evidence to suggest that we really are,
Yep.
my God, are we powerful?
Yeah,
I mean, think about that.
sure are. Yeah.
And from our perspective, it's like we are able to do this, and so we get into the habit, and so it becomes easy.
Yeah.
But what's so easy about recreating reality over and over again continuously? There's
Mhm.
nothing there's a lot of energy being expended in that. Calling that easy is kind of an insult in one sense of the imagination.
Yeah, if you really knew how
Yeah,
much it took.
yeah.
Hmm.
I heard a speaker on that the Gaia channel. Um, she was what was she? She was a past life regressor, I think, and she has these really interesting recordings of people who had gone through past life regression, telling from their perspective, that they're part of some alien race, or all this stuff that's really very far out there. But the point that she made when she was finishing up her talk was, we tend to think of ourselves as human beings as being these relatively not controlled, but well, in some ways controlled, but weak, not terribly developed, still learning, all that kind of thing. And yet, from her perspective, and there are races of alien people living from other planets and so forth who think we're the most powerful people in the universe.
Hmm.
And the reason that she gives for that is that humans, according to her telling of it, have the greatest ability to express things with emotion, and emotion is the power behind ideas. Well, that kind of turns it on its ear, doesn't it? Because we thought up until that point was made that we are not all that powerful, and now we're finding out, well, what if we really are? What if that's what's really going on here? What if this whole conversation that we're having about, is there a path and so forth, is really just us exercising just how freaking powerful we are?
I think it is.
Do you?
Yeah. I think it is. And I think maybe that's the great remembering. That's the veil, is like seeing how powerful you are. Because
Okay.
I think in society, we've been taught that believing that you are powerful or that you're impactful in this world is somehow egotistical. And like,
Mm,
don't do that. Don't be like that. You shouldn't be so full of yourself.
right.
You're too much. And we've been told that so often that we believe it and we forget
Mhm.
that we are creating the reality around us. And I think what you did for me was just solidified the fact that this not supposed to idea, this past that we create and recreate over in our minds, all of it, all of these things are false narratives or beliefs or whatever you want to call them, programming, conditioning that has kept us in this box that we are small and we are less than, and that we are not the powerful source creators that we truly are on the inside. And that the key is tapping into the emotion. I said it at the very beginning that everything in my life has been something, I'm not supposed to do. And those were the greatest. Going against that grain was the greatest moments of my life. Why? Because of the emotion, because I was tapped into truly what I desired in that moment. And I think it's as simple as that, as complex as everything we went around today. Really tap into the emotion and follow it from there.
You know how when we have a guest, at the end, I always ask you to tie it together with a bow. You did it today without me even asking.
It just came out.
It just came out. Like, wow, you just tied that together fantastically.
Thank you.
I couldn't
It
even
inspired me.
fathom putting it together that well. That was beautiful.
Wow.
I think
We're
we
just
found
connected.
our stopping spot for the day. I mean, my goodness, that was good.
It was a beautiful conversation.
It really was. Thank you so much, Jodie Lynn. I can't wait to have the next one with you.
Thank you, Walt.
And thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere, especially those of you who hung out this long. Look what you got at the end. I mean, my goodness. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.